Today we are learning basketball with CT Fazio, head basketball coach at SLG and with AAU, a contributor for Crown Hoops. CT covers the NBA, the draft, college hoops, Denver Nuggets, a little bit of St. John's here as a fan too. How you doing today, CT?
Hey Ryan, doing well. Thanks for having me on. Big fan of your, the pod and all the work that you do. So great to top on the pod today and talk NBA and anything else. So looking forward to being here.
Hey, right back at you. And I mean, what a day to hop on the podcast and talk about the Denver Nuggets. I mean, here we are about to celebrate this Hall of Fame legendary career of Carmelo Anthony making the Hall of Fame, first ballot. Let's go, Melo. And then the Denver Nuggets just decide to fire everybody the same week. Like what the heck is going on? So, I want to start with a little bit about your process as a coach and your background before we dive into some of these hot topics. Like as a coach, what are your baseline goals when you're trying to establish a team identity, whatever level that may be? Are there any specific goals you have to start with, no matter the team?
No, it's a great question. So I actually started last year as an assistant coach in AAU and at my school that I coach as well. So I coach seventh and eighth grade middle school um, varsity basketball, boys basketball. So coaching that, coaching AAU, like eighth grade, high school level. Um, but for me, I'd probably say biggest thing, honestly, it's pretty ironic, but Michael Malone, Coach Malone's been a pretty big inspiration for me as far as getting into the coaching ranks. Just seeing how he's been able to kind of, I would say, elevate as a coach. Going from someone who got fired in Sacramento and then carving out a career in Denver for a long time. 10 years as a coach is a long time to be, you know, in one spot. But I'd say for me, just building a culture, I think number one is pretty important. Culture of hard work, accountability, and of course that changes on the level that you're coaching at. If you're coaching middle school, high school, college, NBA, of course, different personalities, um, different kind of levels and things that take place. But I think for me, just the number one thing is building a culture, hard work, accountability, playing hard. And I feel like once you establish that culture, then it kind of translates on the court. Just kind of trying to keep the group connected, um, and of course too learning as I go along. I feel like every year you get more and more acclimated to whatever level you're at. It could be lower level, it could be middle level, could be the most elite, right? But I feel as though experience is definitely the best teacher in life. For me. Um, so having that experience, with the more years that I get under my belt coaching, I feel as though the better I get at it. So, um, but no, it's been a cool journey so far, and I think just getting started. So looking forward to what the future holds.
Yeah, I mean it's super interesting. I wonder what kind of got you into basketball to begin with. I know that I believe, grew up a Denver Nuggets fan, St. John's fan as well.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
So
So I with the Nuggets. Sorry, not to cut you off. For the Nuggets, I actually was pretty ironic. They were talking about Carmelo. He was the one who got me into being a Denver Nuggets fan.
there it is.
Because I'm from New Jersey, so you wouldn't expect someone from New Jersey to be a Nuggets fan. But a couple of my friends growing up were Carmelo fans, just because of the way he played. And I'm sure we'll get to it, later on the show. But just the way he played, as far as cliche to say, but he was a bucket. And of course, too, I think he was pretty influential as far as his, uh, whether that was the shooting sleeve or the headband. Like people wanted to be like Carmelo, and I just gravitated to his style of play. Um, and for me, it wasn't just a player, right? You know how people are fans of players today, whether it's a LeBron fan or a Jokic fan or Luca fan, right? For me, it was I was a Carmelo fan, but I also kind of grew an admiration for the team as well. And then once Carmelo got traded, my friends were always saying to me like, you can't be a Knicks fan now, you'd be a bandwagoner, which was pretty funny because the Knicks really didn't they didn't contend for a title or anything, but it was funny that my friends would poke fun at me for that. So I just stayed as a Nuggets fan, and obviously I think it's paid off. Over the years, Jokic and coming into the team and winning a championship, paid off, especially all those years later. But that's how I became a Nuggets fan, though. Carmelo was probably the main reason for that, and great to see that he's making the Hall of Fame. But I hope the Nuggets can reconcile with him because I think he does mean a lot to their history. like I said, I'm sure we'll get to that, but he's, for me, number one reason why I kind of fell in love with the game, but also too why I became a fan of the Nuggets.
Hey, I mean, let's just dive right in. I mean, like, I couldn't relate more. Like, Carmelo is one of the reasons I love basketball as well. Like, growing up, like, I always say, like, those NBA TNT, like, Tuesday, Thursday nights, like, Dwayne Wade in the early game and Carmelo in the late game, like, two of my top five players, just
Classic.
favorite players to watch all time growing up. And, like, that was just life. You knock out some math homework and you look up and catch the latest game that night growing up, watching Melo and Wade. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with Melo. Like, it's funny, they kind of became like my West team as a fan growing up. Like, I'm a Magic guy, but just between the powder blue jerseys, Carmelo's insane shot making, like anytime you start a franchise in 2K back then growing up, like you go ahead and just pick the Nuggets for all those reasons. Like, he put them on the map to me, and I don't even know where to be. I think we got to start with the actual Denver Nuggets going on, because I'm too excited to talk about Melo. So once we start, we might never stop. So some insane news out of Denver today. Michael Malone is let go, the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, as you mentioned, being there for a decade, seeing a lot of success. The general manager, Calvin Booth, also let go. And what's wild is they just won the title a couple of years ago. Denver's, I mean, right here, I'm repping the sweater, by the way, the Ninja Turtle Denver Nuggets Aaron Gordon esque slam dunk sweater, as one does.
I've
Represent
never seen
what
that
better
shirt.
time to pour one out for that team? Because I mean, like right now, they are a top four seed in the West. They're ninth in point differential, fourth best offense in the league, second most efficient scoring team in the league, yet 22nd overall defensively. But as we say, they just won it all like a couple years ago, and Jokic went on an all-time run, and it just shows that no one is safe in this league, because you just can't really see what's going to happen. It's wild to think that Taylor Jenkins and Michael Malone are not head coaches in the NBA right now, when they're considered two of the best NBA head coaches in the league. So I got a little Jokic video here I made after his run that can kind of play while we're sitting here talking about him. This all time run, Jokic insane shot making, like there was nothing like it. Before we dive into the firings, what does that team mean to you as a Nuggets fan? Like they finally got over the hump. They took out the Lakers. They did it. They did the thing. They proved that you can win a championship with a point center that a lot of people will question his defense, even though he's pretty strong down there, down low, against a lot of matchups. What does this team that actually got over the hump mean to you as a Nuggets fan?
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. I feel like any sport you're a fan of, you always want your team to win the championship. Get to the pinnacle of the sport, right? And I've been a Nuggets fan for so long, and I've been a fan since, like I said before, Carmelo was there, and Allen Iverson, Chauncey Billups, and the team before Carmelo was, completely in the dumps. And then once Carmelo left, the team was pretty good after that. But then, again, when Brian Shaw took over, and it was kind of in a bad spot again. Um, but yeah, this team for me meant a ton. Obviously, a lot of the guys on the team from then are still on the team now. When you talk about the core four, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, Jokic, Christian Brown. Um, but yeah, this team meant a lot, and it was a really good team. Definitely a really good team as far as the versatility they had out there. And KCP was someone who I'm sure you're familiar with now, of course, but just such an underrated player. I feel like in the grand scheme of things, as far as his career is concerned. But just such a great team, top to bottom, versatile. Had good shooting, athleticism, defense. Anything that you really could ask for. This team was perfectly constructed around Jokic, and um, a team that I'm going to remember for however long I'm a basketball fan. And Michael Malone as well. Winning that championship as a coach, and people take for granted like winning a championship. It's the toughest thing to do. And the fact that the Nuggets got one championship, and like you said, with Jokic, is someone who's such a unique player that people, had thought that maybe you couldn't win around him. Maybe he was too defensively challenged or too slow, right? And the fact they did it, I think it's an incredible feat and something I'll remember.
Hey, I mean, it doesn't get better. This is what being a fan of a team is all about. Like they finally get over the mountaintop, they hit the ultimate accomplishment, and that leads me to this next question: what the heck happened? Like, is there any like are there any signs from the day to day that you see why a team that literally is one of the few teams considered a contender has an MVP candidate and two-time MVP that looks like he's having his best offensive individual season ever, at least statistically, coming off a 60-point triple-double. That's a 6-0 triple-double just like a week ago. And, the from the front office standpoint, you can kind of see a few moves that maybe didn't go their way, whether they were trying to save money with the salary cap and not bring back KCP, when, like you said, he just fit like a glove for that lineup, like exactly what they needed around that court for a point of attack defender that navigates screens and is very strong, able to shut down or at least slow the game down for the opposing guard, who can hit the open three and really develop some nice scoring versatility, chemistry, super efficient playing off of Jokic while he was there. All good signs as to why Orlando tried to pry him away in the first place. And to me, I understood the bet that in the regular season, replacing him on the aggregate might be doable with how great Christian Braun looked, and trying to supplement that with some other young athletic guards along with the older athletic guard and bringing Westbrook on. But I figured once the playoffs came around, that's where this team would miss KCP, that point of attack defense, the most. And I think record wise, that's pretty much held up. Like I still view them as a contender, even despite the low defense. Like no team wants to play Jokic in the first round, especially if the whole lineup comes together. So, like, did you see any signs on the at the very least from the head coach point of view of what's different about this team this year that led to this decision?
Yeah, I think there's been, I think it's been pretty like well chronicled in the media about the rift that Calvin Booth and Michael Malone had, and um, more so of a philosophy standpoint. Booth was a guy who wanted to supplement the core four of MPJ, Aaron Gordon, Jokic, Murray to keep that core together, and with the new CBA in place, you had to supplement those guys with rookie scale contracts and guys who are on cost controlled deals. And I think Malone is a guy who prefers veterans, in a contending rotation, which I mean makes sense. Um, and I think Christian Braun, I think, was the exception to that rule because he had such a standout. Obviously, you're scouting the draft as well. He had such a standout statistical profile back at Kansas that he was the exception compared to all the other guys that they brought in. To the team, he was just a ready-made player now, able to contribute right away. And I think that kind of led to a rift between Malone and Booth, just not being on the same page as far as a team building standpoint. Um, but I think this was something that was bound to happen. I didn't expect it to happen today, but maybe after the season, regardless of the playoff result, I thought that one of Booth or Malone was probably going to get relieved of their jobs. But um, the defense falling off a cliff from going from like top 10 to 22 is definitely something that's you know surprising, especially with the personnel that they have. They don't have bad defenders, but losing KCP is not a drop from like 8 defensively to 23rd. I think that's pretty steep. So I think there was more at play than what we were led on to believe. But it's shocking that both had gone. I would have thought that they would have picked one and then maybe reassess after. But seems like that the I guess the locker room had gotten pretty bad that they wanted to make a change for both the head coach and the front office. So kind of killed two birds with one stone there.
Hey, the timing is what's wild to me. I mean, the playoffs are literally knocking on the door. Like next week or so, you're going to make this much change, not only in the middle of the season, but I mean, right before your team has a legit chance to contend. I mean, you
Right.
like you mentioned, that really says maybe the lost locker room is lost, where they don't want to fight for this guy anymore, because I don't understand the timing of this move at all. Like, given the accolades, given the accomplishment of this team together, the respect that coach deserves for doing that, on top of just where you're at right now, like you you could be playing Luka or Steph in a week and have to game plan them, and you're dealing with an entirely new coaching staff and style of play, like goals, identity, all this stuff. So like that's something where I think I think I saw earlier that from Matt Moore that Jokic did not actually request this publicly
Right.
or anything like that. That he did not make a public demand that, or any sort of demand in terms of the reporting that the coach get let go. So that's what just throws me off is the timing more than anything. Because what I thought was Jamal Murray was finally coming into form a little bit the last few months. Like he's been hurt
Yep.
recently, but he was finally looking like Jamal again after months of just looking off, not looking like he had the tough shot making touch that we know him to be. And Westbrook felt like a pretty good regular season signing, really meshing, especially in transition and off the ball, accepting a different role that he didn't accept elsewhere because of that chemistry with Jokic. So, between Jokic possibly picking up the slack and possibly having his best offensive individual season ever, if not like of any player when you look at some of the stats that he's putting up. Jamal coming back, Westbrook meshing well. What do you think Denver's chances are of salvaging this season through all these ups and downs, the injuries, the firings, and can Jokic just go nuclear for a few rounds and kind of still salvage this thing? All right, let's try that again. Do you think Nikola Jokic can salvage the season with the Nuggets despite all these firings and up and down play for the season and the team so far?
Yeah, I think it's the NBA long question this year for the season. I think, especially with all the drama going on in Denver. It's usually you see GM and a coach sometimes not being in alignment, but it seems like that I would say that dilemma between the two of them really had a trickle down effect on the rest of the roster. Um, and I think with Jokic, obviously he's one of the best players of all time. But I think internal conflict does cause, I would say, a bit of I'd say like a schism, between the players and the coach, the players and upper management. And you can see that in their play over the past, especially over the 4-game losing streak. The team was definitely not playing as hard as they've showed in the past. Definitely haven't shown that they've playing together. They've played together for so long, but if you were just a neutral observer, you would say, I don't think these guys have really played much, together before. Um, and I think, the Kings game happened after Malone, got fired and the Nuggets won that game, pretty convincingly. And the Kings were on a streak. I think they were on a 5-game winning streak, beating some pretty good teams as well. Levine I think he was averaging like 30 points on like really, really good efficiency. Sabonis has been playing pretty well too. I know Monk's been out, but for the Nuggets to kind of, I would say, rebound and win that game, especially after all of the turmoil going on. A lot of people say like it's that coach bump, that new coach bump that you get right after, Malone got fired. But I kind of, I thought the way they played was noticeable. A lot of the guys out there were playing much harder than we've seen. The communication on defense, especially, has been lacking between the group, and I thought it was pretty evident that you saw Jokic on the sideline. And he was directing guys, encouraging guys, showing certain players, what he was seeing out there, and that's something we haven't really seen a lot this year. We've seen it in the playoffs with Jokic when the intensity's turned up, but I feel like now he kind of took that responsibility as being the leader of the team. Without Malone there now, I think he kind of took the reins of that, and it was pretty noticeable. Jamal Murray's coming back tonight against the Grizzlies, so that's another big piece of the puzzle. If they win that game against the Grizzlies, then they're in a prime position to get a playoff spot. I think in the 4 seed, if they win that game and they win against Houston. So I think with Jokic, anything's possible. He's already proven to be the best player on the planet. Won a championship already. I still think this team's got a chance. A lot of people probably don't. I think this team has a chance, especially where you look at the standings, how they shake out. I think matchup wise is going to be pretty indicative of where the Nuggets can finish. If they get in that 4-5 and they play like good Clippers or Warriors, I think they could win the first round, and then OKC after that's going to be tough. But if they can kind of string together some good play over the last 2 games and kind of carry that momentum into the playoffs and kind of reestablish, I think that trust and belief in the group. I think there's really no telling where they could go. Do I expect them to win the championship? I mean, I wouldn't bet on it, but crazier things have happened after coaching changes, and the NBA is a very volatile game. So I wouldn't be shocked if they were able to turn that around and save their season. And that's what the owner of the Nuggets did. Josh Kroenke, at 3 games left of the season, was kind of like a last ditch effort to save the season. So we'll see if his bet pays off.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Is the timing is wild for a lot of reasons, but we're not in the room. We're not in the back room there that knows ins and outs of what's actually going on in the locker room. So if the higher ups kind of see like this is our only shot to save the season, with we got a healthy Jokic and a healthy supporting cast, like top elite offense. If we can just try a little bit defensively, bring that effort, and then suddenly, it's league average defense instead of bottom of the barrel defense. I mean, that's worlds of difference when you got the offense figured out like the Nuggets do. So let's see how this last ditch effort works out for them. And like you said, outside the Thunder, this team has the experience and talent and two-way versatility that they can take anyone if everyone shows up on both ends around Jokic. So that's the big what if. Excited to see how it plays out. Denver Nuggets being able to go on a run like that amidst all these firings and the injuries and just up and down play this year would obviously be really impressive. They're not the only playoff team to be going through a coaching change as the playoffs are happening. So that opens things up a little bit, and there's a lot of not turmoil, but a lot of things changing with obviously the Mavs kind of getting beat up, the Lakers adding Luka now, and a little bit of an unknown of how everything's going to look in the playoffs. So, maybe they can overcome it because the Suns aren't what we thought, and really the only team that has proven they need to be taken like another level seriously to me is the Thunder, and everyone else is pretty beatable when it comes to the just who's the most experienced playoff team in the West and who has the best players. There's only so many teams with a superstar MVP candidate with a defensive play finisher like Aaron Gordon here, who suddenly is a knockdown 3-point shooter this year. He's shooting lights out from deep for maybe the first time of his career. And I have this other video playing now of every impact play he had during the playoff run, where to me, he was the most versatile defender, the most impactful defender in the whole playoffs. That was a huge part of that playoff success. I think he slowed down guys like Kevin Durant and Karl Anthony Towns during that run, especially where it seemed like he got up under the matchup of the slim, taller shooter, and he was able to affect them. Just a big wing defender. Obviously, you got Michael Porter Jr., help defense, shot blocking, and kind of development this year off the ball as an off-ball mover, a cutter, and obviously that knockdown 3-point shooter himself. Jamal able to catch fire. So I mean, this team is ready to hang with anybody. So I'll definitely give them a chance. It's just wild to see all this happening to a team as impressive as them. So, but you note some of the rifts between front office and coach, and at the end of the day, you want everyone to be in line in unison from top to bottom. And if Nikola Jokic especially kind of is the start of everything, everyone else kind of has to line up with what he wants if you're going to build a team around a talent like that. And we've never really seen any, let's say, drama come out from Jokic in his time there, where he was rumored to force anything to happen. So I don't think that's necessarily the case either, like some sort of demand. I don't think it was like that, but maybe he just kind of made his wishes known, and this is what happened. So super interested to kind of see where Denver ends up here. And one quick question on one of your other favorite programs before we hit Melo is St. John's. What's it been like seeing this rebrand with St. John's, Rick Pitino, and your thoughts on RJ Lewis as an NBA draft prospect?
Yeah, I mean, with Rick Pitino, he's obviously a legendary college basketball coach. I mean, legendary coach in general. If you really want to, boil it down, he's coaching the NBA, he's coaching the EuroLeague, coaching college, he's coaching every level of basketball. I think in college, I think his resume speaks for itself. Winning, I think he's won 2 national championships, resurrected multiple programs, mid-major and the high major level. So definitely his resume speaks for itself. But I think his rebrand at St. John's is definitely one of the more, I would say, bigger accomplishments of his career. St. John's has been a program that's been lost for, I'd say, like 2 decades. Probably has been relevant since the days of like Ron Artest or Metta World Peace. As far as him being there, so the team has like barely even made the tournament. I think they've only won like one game since 2000 in the NCAA tournament. So it's been a team that's been pretty much irrelevant in the Big East for a long time. So for Pitino to kind of resurrect the program, obviously it's a different era with the NIL era, um, but he's been able to recruit really well, able to kind of bring back basketball to New York City, which has been pretty cool. People are packing out the Garden, sold out games. Um, Winning the Big East regular season and the conference championship was something that they haven't done in like 2 decades too. So definitely was a big moment as far as bringing back the program. Um, and then to touch on the RJ Lewis incident or benching, uh, I mean, for me as a coach, and I think we've seen it as well. Like, I made the kind of comparison on Twitter the other day that even if say like a Jamal Murray or you want to say like a Paolo, right? If they're playing bad, you're still going to play those guys down the stretch of games when it's close, regardless of if they're shooting 1 for 20, 1 for 30, bad defense or whatever, just because benching them and trying to give it someone else another opportunity. It's like you want to win and lose with your best player, especially with RJ Lewis in his case, Big East Player of the Year, All Conference, first team player, All American as well. Um, so I think seeing him get benched on the stretch, I thought it was a bad move. A lot of people were upset that people were criticizing Pitino about it. And again, Pitino is a great coach, but he's not infallible as far as criticism is concerned. And if you look at like who St. John's had and their bench is really shallow, like playing anybody else but RJ Lewis was kind of like wild to me. Um, but I think all in all, like closing games with your best player, regardless if they're playing well or not, is kind of I feel like the takeaway there. Um, and I thought, he got you to that point, right? He was able to help you win in the Big East and win a conference title and win a regular season title, and kind of abandon him in that moment. I feel as though it was pretty short sighted, and I don't know, maybe a bit of like a heat in the moment kind of coaching decision. But again, he's a Hall of Famer. I'm nowhere really to be questioning his decision making, but in that instance, I kind of did think that he was wrong, and unfortunately, they kind of went out of the tournament early, but they had a really great year. I mean, something that they haven't been in that position in 2 decades. So for them to get to that point and to win the Big East, I thought was a pretty big accomplishment. But yeah, I thought that play was obviously pretty controversial because a lot of talk shows were talking about it. Twitter for sure was a lot of discourse about it. Listen, if he played, would they have won the game? I'm not entirely sure, but I think for me, especially as a coach, I'm going to play my best players down the stretch. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he he is a controversial coach, and he has controversial moments, and people kind of love talking about him because is a controversial figure. But I'm sure as a St. John's fan, it's just cool to see the program relevant and competing and seriously in it once again. I would say that was the marquee matchup of the second round. The the seed deciders in the small back room knew what they were doing when they got Calipari and Pitino set up, and it was definitely a controversial moment with RJ Lewis and not playing him, and you wonder like what's being said in the huddle. Is the player going against the coach and not following the game plan versus, like you said, like you go down with the ship with the guys that got you there in the first place, so you want to give them a chance to kind of pull things out and learn from the mistakes throughout the game, especially after like communicating if something's wrong early on, rather than like you said, just benching them and not having any other option, and almost as if like it's a stubborn move more than anything else. So it's definitely a weird combo, but definitely a talented player that could easily see his name called on draft day. Let's try that again. RJ Lewis, first round prospect to you. Why?
Yeah, it's a great question. Bias aside, as a St. John's fan, RJ Lewis had a tremendous year. Really took a leap as far as his production was concerned, going from basically bench player slash like fifth starter guy his sophomore year to his junior year being the face of top 10 team in the country. I think that's a pretty noticeable and important, I think, improvement. Um, his 3-pointer percentage was like around like 35%, so decent, but he's gonna have to prove that he's able to shoot when it comes to the league. But other than the shooting, which of course is obviously a very important component to having him in the first round, which I do I have a top 30 grade on him in the class. Um, I think his two-way versatility is something that could really impact a team right away, whether that's a playoff team, whether that's a rebuilding team. Adding a guy like that to rotation or as a spot player at different times, I think is important. I'm a big buyer on his defense. Number one, um, defensively, he's a guy who can guard the point of attack. Very athletic at 6'7". Can really jump out of the gym. He's a guy who can really navigate screens as well, which is a really important characteristic that he possesses. Um, he has the pretty intriguing combination of strength and speed, and in a wing defender and a guard defender, that's a pretty rare trait to have. There were times this year where I think he kind of was aloof defensively because of the offensive burden that he had to score the ball, which we see it all the time in the NBA with stars like that who have a large offensive burden and take plays off defensively. Jokic does that all the time. But with RJ, I just think that if we're looking at prospects in the first round that I think has a chance to at least contribute to a rotation right away, it would be him. Just because I really think that his scoring package is a bit undervalued. A guy that's can run pick and rolls as a secondary ball handler. He's not a primary, of course, but he's a guy at 6'7" you can run second side actions with. He can run pick and rolls. He's actually really adept at making reads out of pick and rolls as well. Obviously not like skip passes and things like that, but he's a guy who can run pick and roll with. Hit the lob threat. Hit guys for threes. But it's the passing, it's the dribbling, it's the shooting, and it's the passing. You can dribble, pass, and shoot as a wing. I think that's an intriguing and important, I think, combination that he has. And of course, going to come to like right opportunity and fit for him being able to carve out a role. But I do think that his improvement this year was extremely noticeable. And you look at the steal percentage and block percentage, I think that's also pretty good indicator that I think he's going to have a chance to be pretty good on that end of the floor defensively. But I think defensively that's where his calling card is going to be for a team right away. It's going to be the defense, and then if the offense can catch up as being a good catch and shooter, a guy like I said, he can run pick and rolls. He's not just like a shooter. He's not just also a guy who can run pick and roll. Like he has a pretty versatile offensive bag. So I would pick him in the first round. Just like I said, I just think that the improvement going from UMass to St. John's, and also another distinction as well is that he had shin splints last year. So he was hurt for majority of the year, his sophomore campaign. He was fully healthy, had surgery that spring. And it was noticeable. He was not as athletic his sophomore year, not as bouncy, not as quick off the dribble. And his rebounding is really good for a guard wing as well. I think he averaged like 7 rebounds a game. So I just think all around play is something that's intriguing. And I would personally, I'm buying it as a guy who I'd bet on as a first rounder. Muted.
Yeah, you hit on it there. That description definitely describes a talent worthy of the first round, especially, after the lottery, once you're looking for good basketball players. Like you got a wing that can hold his own defensively and force turnovers as a calling card, and he can dribble, pass, and shoot. And he brings a little bit of that scoring versatility you mentioned. He can initiate some offense and pick and roll. I mean, that's a pretty complete role player that you're looking for in terms of that, and that leads one to think as well. Maybe there's a little sum of its parts potential there for a swing to a more high end role player, or maybe you see him as a starter, and that's the ultimate like best case scenario. So a lot of skills there. I mean that's what you want to hear out of a potential role player, someone who can guard his position, force turnovers, dribble, pass, and shoot, attack closeouts, not just be the catch and shoot guy, but bring that as well, and be able to put the ball on the floor and keep the ball moving. So good reason to be high on RJ there. And so
I also think too, as an aside for that too, just to piggyback off your explanation there, I think his role, he can scale down as a guy that he scaled up in his role. As a featured option offensively, probably one of the better perimeter defenders in the Big East, maybe even in the country, I think as well. But I just think too, it's noticeable that I think he's going to be pretty comfortable scaling down. And I don't want people to just watch that last game that he had in the tournament and make their conclusion about RJ. I think it's important to look at the whole sample this year and what he was able to contribute. Bringing St. John's a Big East championship. They haven't won the Big East in like 20 years. So for him to be like a major part obviously the face of resurrecting a program like that in a pretty tough conference matters to me. But like you said before, I completely agree with your assessment. I just think that I'd bet on him being able to scale it down as a role player, in the NBA. And I think he has starter upside. I mean, it's possible depending on the situation. But I do think immediately he could carve himself out a pretty good bench role. So I would take him in the first.
Yeah, that's what you want to hear, no doubt. For the scalability in terms of just being able to scale up or down depending on the situation, and it sounds like the type of skill set, like you said, that is scalable in that. But like if all you need is a starter that can plug and play in general lineups, like that seems like the right kind of guy for a two-way impact role player. And then obviously, if he's bringing defense and can do all those things, that's a pretty high-end bench player as well. So good looks there. Like I think fans can also be the harshest critics. So like if you have a baseline of what you're looking for in an NBA player and you see NBA skills, you probably watched more tape on these guys than the average scout, and you probably are just as negative as a fan in general, not you, just fans in general are just as critical and negative as anyone else. So like if you see the outlines of an NBA player and what translates between defense and ball skills, that just making good decisions with the ball, especially for like a role player that just wants to have as few holes as possible. That's all you really need to be high on a guy, especially if you see a potential rotation player. So definitely see that, and we'll see where St. John's goes from here, and they're finally back. But I think it's time we dive into the big reason that you're here. The what everyone's here waiting for is Carmelo Anthony. Melo. Shout out Melo, man. He makes the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. I'm going to drop off a couple accolades here. There's honestly too many to count, or we'll be here all day. So we'll have to split it up a little bit. But let's start with just kind of his Hall of Fame resume, like 25 points a game from 2004 to 2017 with the Nuggets and Knicks. To me, he's arguably the most unstoppable offensive scorer, bucket getter of all time. Like Draymond Green called him the toughest player he's ever had to guard in NBA history. He can beat you with a jab step, a pump fake, a shoulder lean without a single dribble. He's truly matchup proof. Like he's stronger than the bigs, quicker than the wings, has a rare combo of size, speed, tough shot making, shooting touch, pristine patient footwork. He's just a one of a kind player. So shout out Melo, man. Carmelo Anthony, starting from the top, like at Oak Hill Academy, arguably the most talent of any high school before Mount Verde came around was Oak Hill with Josh Smith and Brandon Jennings and all these exciting players. When Melo was there, he finished 32-1, third place in the country. He beat LeBron in the national stage in this all-time epic matchup. He was a McDonald's All-American starter. Went on to Syracuse, 2003 NCAA champion, 30-5 record, 22 points a game there. He was the third freshman ever to be Final Four's most outstanding player, best college player by like every award you can think of, top 6 all time, and a lot of the scoring and rebounding records between the school, the Final Four, the tournament as a whole. And then the big one for me is his Olympic resume. Like Kevin Durant is now, if not past him, at least on par with his resume. But at the time, Melo was Captain America. He was Team USA Olympic Melo for a reason. He retired as like the most decorated Olympic basketball player in history. He got started with the 1 bronze, but followed it up with the Redeem Team, 3 straight gold medals, that epic matchup with Spain, first all time in Olympic career games, points, rebounds, shots taken and made, threes taken, free throws attempted and made. And some of those records are now in possession of Kevin Durant, another all-time scorer. But man, Olympic Melo is special. Like that 08 international team was special. And just to list off a couple more accolades before. Actually, no. Let's take a break there because his accolades don't stop. We'll get to the NBA in a second. What stands out to you with Carmelo Anthony outside of his NBA success? What's some of what he means to you before we even get to Denver and New York as an international player, his college success, his high school success? What stands out to you the most?
Yeah, I think you listed off some great. He's got a long list of accolades in his career, but
Oh man,
Yep.
we're just getting started.
But I mean, for me, he was the main reason why I really gravitated toward basketball. I grew up as a baseball player. Growing up, I was a big Yankees fan. Derek Jeter, in particular, is my favorite player. But then I kind of shifted more to basketball. Kind of gravitated toward playing, basketball in my high school. Playing in college a bit. Intramural more in like a non-competitive setting. But with Melo though, as far as like following the NBA, getting into college, he was definitely the main reason for me, getting into it. It was just style of play. As far as being a scorer, a guy who was, in his earlier years, very athletic. I was able to dunk on people. Quick first step. The jab step, of course, is famous in his repertoire. Um, I think too, like he was a very influential player. Like I said before, like the headband and the shooting sleeve, and just the way he was able to play, like kind of really, I feel like resonated with people. And even growing up, like people in my school would go to school for Halloween as Carmelo with the headband, the Nuggets powder blue jersey, and the shooting sleeve. So I think he was influential in that aspect. Him and Allen Iverson in particular, for the Nuggets, as far as that team was concerned, was definitely very influential and very popular. But yeah, I think like you said with Melo, his international career stands out. A guy who really represented the country well. Um, I feel like a lot of people discount that in his resume. As far as representing for USA in the Olympics, and people say he didn't have a title and he didn't go to a finals, right? But um, I mean, for me, like I feel as though like representing your country and playing at a high stage internationally is something that's commendable. That's something that where I think that's kind of gives him a leg up in his career at making the Hall of Fame. So I think Melo had a really great career, and even in Syracuse too. Going back to his college days, winning the national title at Syracuse and having, I'd say, one of the better college, one and done careers of all time from a statistical standpoint. I just think there's so many kind of moments and accolades in his career that you could point to that really stand out. And I think for me, like I said, the biggest thing was that he was an influential player as far as his play style, but also, you know, like I said, the headband, the shooting sleeve. There's just so many things where people just wanted to play and be like Melo. So that's where my kind of fandom comes from with him.
Melo is one of the coolest players to ever do it,
Yeah.
man. We got the shout out Evan Gualberto here, does amazing work breaking down these videos. We got some of Carmelo's post up powerhouse, those fundamental face up jab step midi pull ups that Melo's come to know. Like I'm trying to put this in the right words, and I don't want to make this a Jokic versus Melo debate or something. I'm sure you're someone who thinks that the Nuggets should just retire both jerseys for the number
Yep.
15. Not too dissimilar from the Magic with T Mac and Penny Hardaway with the number 1 jersey. Like these players are some of the best to ever walk through the door. Like entire generations of fans root for these teams because of these handful of players. And like you hit on the influence of Melo, like let's be clear here. Jokic is better by every statistical measure. He has the accomplishments that Melo wasn't able to get, the title, the multiple MVPs, all of these statistical records. He could very well end up with a top 10 NBA career of all time. That kind of trajectory between the stats and the accomplishments with Nikola Jokic, like clearly the best player. And that being said, like even though if you're writing the history of the sport, Jokic has almost redefined the point center position in a way that few others really have. I think Melo just means more to more people. Like he's just almost bigger the Carmelo Anthony brand for all the reasons you said, the aesthetics, the coolness, the tough shot making. What's also wild is these are two of the toughest shot makers I've ever seen. Like there are not I consider the toughest shot in basketball to be the baseline back down fadeaway where you fall out of bounds, you're going over the wrong shoulder, kind of like Melo's doing now, except fading. Oh, if he faded the other way, where it's just an impossible shot. And these guys did it on the regular. It was the kill shot. Paulo Banchero breaks it out every once in a while, which makes me really happy as a fan, just getting to watch that in his bag and see some similarities there. But like these are two of the toughest shot makers to ever play. And I just think Melo just means something. And to you, there's that beautiful backdoor baseline fadeaway like Jordan or Hakeem before him, setting the tone. It's just like that. Along with the jab set many pull up, it just lives rent free in my mind as Melo's shot. And there's, like you said, he's a hooper's hooper. Like he's your favorite hooper's favorite hooper. That Iverson Melo team, what it meant to the culture between those headbands and sleeves, it can't be understated. And like personally, my favorite team, the one that got me into it, is that 2009 team with Chauncey Billups, Birdman with the hair. You got like the spiked about a foot above his head. Kenyon Martin, Nene, J.R. Smith, and then you had Dante Jones and Anthony Carter. Those powder blue jerseys, like man, that was the best team to me in Denver's in that whole run. Really, the best team Melo was on to me. I know he had success with the Knicks and that what if with Amari if he could have stayed healthy, but that was the team that I thought could have won it all. And as a Magic guy, I really wanted to see Melo or Dwight come away with their first finals, their first NBA championship, and of course Kobe just got in the way. Like that was peak Melo coming off the 2008 Olympics where they got that experience with Kobe Bryant up close. To me, it was like the best year as a fan. I think it was my favorite year as a product because all of these superstars took another leap with D Wade and Kobe and LeBron and CP3 and Dwight, even Bosh, like all these names with the Olympic team, D Will, that all were just incredible the next year. And before I list off a ton of more accolades for his NBA stuff, just diving into that series, what was it like as a fan getting to see peak Melo versus peak Kobe up close to hit on some of the stats? Carmelo called it war with Kobe Bryant, an all-time back and forth playoff series. Like you could kind of see Kobe just like snatch the soul out of Denver and out of Orlando when it was all said and done. But before it happened, it was billed as like Kobe versus LeBron as the Nike puppets. But, I was one of those guys that wanted Dwight versus Melo because it was just an all-time team, two balanced rosters, really finding the defense and playmaking shooting around Melo that worked where you could see him winner. And he always got, as you say, he always kind of got like, he always got compared to LeBron, first of all, which was just unfair to begin with. And then he just always got hit with his negatives of a defense or not passing, as if Kobe wasn't winning all these titles doing the same thing. But, Melo was just one of one score, and this was the year that it worked. So to hit on some of these games to see how close and all time it was, game one, Lakers, they win by 2 points. Kobe drops 40, Melo drops 39. Nail biter. Game two, the Nuggets come back and take it. Even the series 1-1, they win by 3. Melo drops 34, Kobe 32. Game three, Lakers win by 6. Kobe drops 41. Carmelo drops 21. Game four, Nuggets take it back again by 19. They blow them out. Kobe drops 34. Melo only 15. That's actually Chauncey Billups and J.R. Smith dropped 24 points apiece in that one. Game five, Lakers by 9. Melo drops 31. Kobe drops 22. And then game six, it was over. Lakers by 27. It's a blowout. Kobe drops 35. Melo 25. So on the whole series, Carmelo puts up 28, 5, 4, 1.3 steals, 55% true shooting. And Kobe just went nuclear, 34 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 0.8 steals on 63% true shooting. The what if was over. Kobe goes ahead and wins it. But, what was it like being a fan in that time and getting to see that epic matchup? And, your thoughts on peak Melo, just his standing around the league and all the criticism that he faced. I saw Dwight versus Kobe the next round in person. I was there the night that the confetti went down for the other team. And, I'm trying to say Kobe Bryant has never felt closer to Michael Jordan and that comparison than what those two series felt like. Just another guy that would rip your heart out, rip the soul out of the team, just feeling like you had no answer. Because like you said, Melo was defended like he had never defended before. He even admitted he was like trying to bully ball Kobe a little bit, but Kobe would just give it right back and make impossible shots. And to be fair, it's understated. He had one of the best front courts ever by his side, and Ron Artest was not quite there, but every other Laker front court guy you think of was there. There was Trevor Ariza, young Trevor Ariza, obviously Pau Gasol down low. Andrew Bynum was still peak Andrew Bynum, and they had Lamar Odom off the bench. I mean, that is some versatility and length that just gave too many problems to Melo and Dwight in both of those series. So, shout out Kobe, RIP. It was an all-time series. It one of my favorite. Just like I said, it's my favorite playoffs. You had that Celtics versus Bulls first round series in that playoffs. Like, it was just epic. Like, not to discount basketball today, but there was just something about the narrative and the stars and the storylines and just that tough shot making where the paint was packed because of the lack of spacing, but it also made the tough shot making cooler or harder in a way because they had less room to work with. And it was just an awesome balance to see. It was obviously a little bit of bias growing up watching that, but hey, what are we going to do? That's the basketball we saw at the time. And so we're going a little bit almost in reverse here, but I want to hit on real quick just all the accolades Melo actually had in the NBA, because there's a lot of them. And I'm going to bring up this second screen here where I went ahead and visualized every shot Carmelo Anthony ever took. It's one of my favorite data viz. I have two versions of it. The Denver, as you can see here, the New York version, as you can see here. And a lot of his accolades are already noted. I'll leave the Knicks one up. It's probably a little easier to see on the big screen here. But a lot of his accolades are noted here. But just to run through some of them, he was in arguably the best draft class ever with LeBron and Wade and Bosh in that top five. Carmelo retired 10th all time in NBA scoring, 10th all time in field goal attempts, 13th all time in points, including the playoffs. He was a one-time scoring leader in 2013, made the all-rookie first team, back and forth rookie of the year race with LeBron, where Melo ended up making the playoffs in his first year on a good playoff team, translated to the league immediately. He was a 6-time All-NBA team kind of guy. He was a 10-time All-Star. He made the NBA 75 team, 19-time Player of the Week, 12-time Player of the Month, finished third in MVP voting in 2013 and sixth in 2010, 24th all-time in minutes played, 33 all-time in games played. And you can see some of his fun facts here on the chart. You got 24,000 shots taken here, 10,000 shots made, 16,000 jump shots, 1,100 dunks. There's 24 points per game on 25,000 shots over his career. Made the Western Finals in 2009, won 49 games or more 6 times as his team's best player. I think when you guarantee 50 wins, you're probably a superstar that your team can build around. Like, I think we can let that narrative go. And as we've said, he's just one of the toughest shot makers ever. I have a list of his top 10 moments as a scorer. But before we jump into those moments, what are your favorite moments and memories, specific ones, anyone that popped ahead, like the first thing you think of with, the coolest Carmelo moment, a shot, a dunk, a game winner, whatever it was that pops into your mind? Let's try that one more time. What's it like seeing peak Melo up close? Kobe and Melo back and forth. The all-time playoff series to me is that 2009 back and forth series. Just peak Melo, peak Kobe, giving it to each other, giving their all, putting up, trading 30 and 40-point games and stealing games. 1-1, 2-2. Just a great series. What was it like seeing it in person up close?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a bunch, especially in pieces that I've written on online. Carmelo was a guy who got me into basketball. He really made me really take an interest in taking it more seriously, as far as how the game is played. Being a fan of a team, he's my favorite player growing up. So he obviously made me become a Nuggets fan. But watching him and Kobe go back and forth in their battles over the years, I think that's kind of underrated about that era, was that the rivalry was like a big factor, in watching it, and especially now, I think it's kind of dampened a bit in that aspect. There's not really that many rivalries, I would say, anymore. Other than like Cavaliers and Warriors. When LeBron and Curry were going at it. Like now, I don't really feel like there's that many rivalries in the NBA, which is
it added to the
kind of takes
narrative
away.
back then.
Yep, added to the narrative for sure. And I think Carmelo and Kobe was definitely a narrative. Back then in the Western Conference. Carmelo and Kobe going at it. Like I said, Carmelo, AI, the years he had Chauncey Billups on his team, Kenya Martin, J.R. Smith, the iconic team. Like we were saying too before, the jerseys, the headband, the shooting sleeve, with all in one, just made it a fun watch. But yeah, those battles were legendary. Carmelo and Kobe going back and forth, especially in the Western Conference Finals that one year, like you said. That was probably like uh, that moment was probably where I really wanted to take the game more seriously as a fan. I was still young at that point, but it was something where I was a huge baseball fan growing up, and that kind of made me pivot to go more basketball, to not only play but also be a fan of to watch. So um, those battles will always be something I cherish and definitely remember as like my beginning into liking and taking a more serious interest in basketball. But definitely one of the more iconic series that we've been able to watch, especially from a scoring perspective, a competitiveness perspective as well. Those guys going back and forth. I've never seen Carmelo play defense as hard as he has against Kobe at that time. So
Hey,
definitely
that's the one he
memorable
described
time.
as war, as we said before. That Melo described it as war, like going to war. I mean, these are all-time greats, all-time tough shot makers, defending each other, giving it their all, and still hitting those tough shots over each other. It's what you want to see. A lot of people think that Kobe or that Dwight Howard ended the puppet commercial, the Nike puppets for LeBron and Kobe, but maybe some of us wanted to see Dwight or Carmelo get their first ring, and that's what we were rooting for on the other side of that. So we got one of them there. Kobe had other plans. He was just unstoppable the rest of the way. That front court was just impossibly tough, super front loaded, super talented. Just not much Melo could do, not much Dwight could do, and Kobe, is the one that broke through. But we'll remember that year for peak Melo, for peak Dwight just as much. And appreciate you taking the time to hop on and talk about some of our favorite players here at CT.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Um, big fan of the show. Um, so I really appreciate you having me on and hitting on a lot of topics. Nuggets, St. John's, all my favorite topics. So definitely was one of my more favorite podcasts that I was able to jump on. So always appreciate
Hey,
that.
you already know. Appreciate the kind words. A lot of fun. Always fun talking hoops, and can't go wrong with the Nuggets and St. John's and Melo. It's always a good time. So appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Me too.
I have the two that I think you're thinking of right here. The poster slam on Paul Millsap, where Carmelo jumps in the air, one hand, steals the inbound pass, quick power dribble, and just a monster power slam on poor Paul Millsap back in 2009. Just nothing he could do but take that dunk. That was one of the all-time moments. And for me, the first one that came to mind was his game winner over LeBron, a pull-up jumper right in his face really early in their career. Denver versus Cleveland, first time around for both of them. Like that was one of the marquee moments for me in terms of just an individual play that I think of where you can Google it and see a cool couple cool pictures and shots of that shot, and just an incredible moment. And just to hit on some of his top scoring outings as well. Like on top of all these clutch moments, Carmelo's top scoring outings, 45 points 3 times for the Knicks against the Blazers in 2013 New Year's Day, against the Rockets in the same year, against the Hawks in 2017. It's crazy how spread out some of these scoring outings are. He had 46 points for the Knicks against the Jazz in 2014. And then we get to the big ones, 47 points on the Nuggets against the Kings on 79% field goal percentage in 2008. 49 points for the Nuggets against the Wizards on 76% shooting in 2008. 50 points for the Nuggets against the Knicks, his future team, in 2009 on 61% shooting. 50 points for the Nuggets against the Rockets in 2011 on 67% shooting. 50 points in a Knicks game against the Heat that first year the Heatles came together, 2013 on 69% shooting. Should be noted, no LeBron in that game, but it felt like an epic matchup at the time. The new Nick look, the new Heat look, and then the no game better encompasses Melo's career than how about he set the all-time record on the Knicks and Madison Square Garden for 62 points against the Bobcats, who are no longer named that possibly one reason why one of Jordan Brand's guys did this to his team. But Melo dropped 62 points on 66%, with the best part, 0 assists, 0 steals, and a half-court buzzer-beating floater. Just the all-bucket box score for his career high. Nothing really sums up the Melo experience like that. And man, just an insane run as a scorer. I just can't say enough about, like, to me, he honestly might be my third favorite player of all time if I'm putting names on a list. Like, there's just nothing like powder blue Melo hitting the midi pull-ups, throwing the three to the dome celebration after a big three. Man, shout out Melo, man. So I thought we would end this pod with a fun exercise here where we're just going to draft the coolest Melos to ever exist. I mean, there's literally too many to choose from. My big board is deep. I've got 10 solid picks here on a 5-round big board. So I'm going to let you start, though. You do the honor. Which Carmelo Anthony is the coolest Melo?
I'm still taking Nuggets Melo as the coolest Melo. I have to do it. And it's not even, I don't think, a bias aside. I just, the jerseys, like I said, the headband, the shooting sleeve, him teaming up with Allen Iverson, I thought was a pretty iconic moment as well. And they were successful. It's not like they were a team that was just bad, and they were stat padding and whatever. They actually had success. Two of the most iconic, I think, two of the most influential players to play the game, teaming up together as well. So I'm going to say Melo from the Nuggets. I thought he had some swag. He was cool. The jerseys were cool, the headband, the shooting sleeve. So I'm taking, and he was, and again, controversial opinion. I don't know if anyone will disagree or agree. I mean, Carmelo was with the Nuggets longer than he was with the Knicks when you look at his resume. And again, I think he had more success with the Nuggets than with the Knicks. Honestly, if we're really talking about playoff success and accolades. I mean, maybe with the Knicks, but I think with the Nuggets, it was more of a, he was fresh out of Syracuse, guy putting a team on the map that was, pretty bad before he came there. And honestly, I think he resurrected the team. So I'm gonna say Melo is number one. Carmelo in the Nuggets uniform is number one draft Melo.
Hey, you got the right answer here. I mean, that's my first pick too. Those powder blue Denver Mellow, like, with, oh man, there's nothing like it. And honestly, I agree with, I don't think it's nostalgia talking. Like, I think when you have that early athleticism that Mello brought instantly, along with that tough shot making, like, you could argue as a scorer, he hit his prime right as he was entering the Knicks, and that he had half of his prime with New York. But like you said, I think the Denver team just had a little more success. Like, if anything, the Knicks were kind of more disappointing for his entire team there, because it was one of those things. One of those things again where I think he just kind of got compared to LeBron, and they traded the entire roster to bring in a guy that was a superstar at the time, but then expected him to basically be the superstar that can win and compete for a finals with no help, because all the help we're going to bring you is getting hurt along the way. And like a big what if with Amari, if he had stayed healthy. I mean, Raymond Felton was really good back then too, but it obviously had a Linsanity moment too there, but it just wasn't quite the same as powder blue Nuggets Mellow. Like, it's just a special place in my heart for that. So you made the right choice here. And so with the second pick, I'm gonna throw a little curveball. I'm going Olympic Mellow. He Captain America, Team USA Mellow. We mentioned all the accomplishments. Like, he was that, to me, that's the most celebrated version of Melo, was the most successful version. His game just meshed perfectly with the Olympic style, between the 3-point line being a little bit closer, accepting a role that was a little more off ball, catch and shoot, quick fire off of that incredibly talented, especially 2008 Olympic team is the one that stands out. But he's the one that stuck around. He was the vet over and over that hit all the records for the all-time scoring. Like, I think he deserves to be celebrated. His career, especially for that international success that literally only Kevin Durant has surpassed or been on par with ever since then. We're talking two of the greatest scorers to ever play. So shout out Olympic Melo. I guess we got to go snake draft here. So with the third pick, I'm also going to take Knicks Melo. Just, you got to go 3 to the dome. That he was a legend. Honestly, Knicks Melo is almost an umbrella into other Melos that we might get to later. But, that's the one that he's a New York guy. I think he celebrates the most, and he probably has the best relationship with. So, Knicks fans love him. He's a legend up there. So shout out Knicks Melo, and you're up with the fourth pick in this snake draft of the coolest Melo draft.
Probably with my next pick, I think we're kind of dwindling with some options now. I think the best ones are taken. I'm going to take Hoodie Melo if that's a pick. Just somebody who is able to just cook everybody and pick up. And I feel like I said, with Melo being influential, like the hoodie was, see guys on the bench now always have hoodies on, and they kind of, I think the NBA actually like didn't have like the zip up with the hoodie on, like on the bench is like bench attire, like for a while until like as of recent. So could make the argument he was influential in that area as well. So I'm gonna take Hoodie Melo, pick up legend. Uh, of course with the hoodie on. It was pretty cool. So Hoodie Melo is my second pick.
Absolutely. Great pick. Got to do it. He, like you said, he popularized the hoodie under the jersey best of that I can tell. I don't think that was a very a thing with all that sleeves and all that clothing all over yourself under a jersey. I don't know many that really wanted all that. So like he really made it a thing. And you got back picks here. We're going snake draft.
All right, I'm gonna go Syracuse Melo. Guy who won national title as a freshman. Like I said, one of the best, I think, freshman one and done seasons in college history, from a scoring perspective. Again, I just think that it was iconic. Syracuse, of course, is like a legendary basketball program, but I don't think you could tell the story of Syracuse basketball without Carmelo. Him and Jim Boeheim, of course, teaming up again with Team USA basketball. I just think it was an iconic time. Especially him with I don't know if you've seen like with the newspaper of him winning was pretty cool. He also had again, he was wearing the headband back then too. So it was with the orange Syracuse jersey. Give me Syracuse Melo. It was a great time in history.
Hey, that's a great choice. Like I think as you've kind of alluded to before, like I'd say especially outside the NBA, people don't give him enough credit for his basketball accolades in his career. Like this is the Basketball Hall of Fame after all, and we should say that you could argue he has at least 2, if not 3 cases to make the Basketball Hall of Fame between his college success, his Olympic success, and his NBA success, let alone the high school stuff too. So like you can really like look back in history and not find many players that have as much accomplishments in basketball as Carmelo Anthony. He's arguably the greatest player to never win a championship when you put him amongst the peers in that standing as well. And once you add up all the stuff outside the NBA, let alone with the NBA, like as we've said before, like top 10 all-time scorer that like had that one set I mentioned. He won 49 games 6 times as a team's best player. He won gold for a team that wasn't winning gold before he got there. He helped reset the entire Team USA culture that was adrift for years. Like he's just a one of the toughest players to ever guard, and like he needs his flowers to be celebrated as just that. So that's why we're here, and that's why we're drafting Melo. So with the 6th pick, I got to mix it up. I got to go bodega Melo here. He would walk into the bodegas, alluding to the New York, the coaching tree of Melos. That was part of the New York Melo, but his own thing. A viral meme, of course, that just took over the internet. Him, I want to say like a white robe, maybe even a funny hat that looked like he just rolled out of bed and went down to the bodega, and it went viral. That's just a hilarious. The rest of these might very well be meme based Melos because he just gave us so many great moments. So I got to go with Bodega Melo here. And man, with the 7th choice is tough. There is some basketball left. There is some memes left. I'm gonna mix it up though. I'm gonna go with the Rihanna look meme, the risk it all meme. He was, on a little henny, ready to risk it all, as the meme said. You got to go the Rihanna look which he has a great story on. If you can look it up, I want to say shout out to his Melo and Miro pod that he tells it on there of just like what was actually going on in that moment. But man, that one is just one of the funniest memes to ever hit the internet. So shout out to Melo ready to risk it all for Rihanna there. So great. So you're up now to your last two picks here, 8 and 9 in the coolest Melo draft.
I gotta make this a good one. I went basketball a lot, so I think I'll go with a meme. Uh, the one in OKC. Again, I think his OKC career was kind of short lived for the most part. Uh, but the iconic, he was at the press conference and somebody asked him if he was coming off the bench, and then you ever see like that GIF on Twitter where it's like who me? It's like pointing to himself. That's always a funny one for me. So I'm gonna take the who me Carmelo when he was he felt disrespected that somebody asked him if he was coming off the bench. Yep, I use that one all the time, so I had to use that one now. This is a tough one because I could go a couple different ways here, but um, man, I'll probably take O'Kill Melo. I'll take O'Kill Melo. I think we've kind of hit on all the good. I mean, of course, you picked the Knicks Melo, which was obviously a really good player too. But having Nuggets Melo, Syracuse Melo, and O'Kill Melo, it's I mean legendary places he's played at, legendary scoring career at all three stops. So take O'Kill Melo, and obviously O'Kill's a place that has historically a ton of great basketball talent, NBA talent. So for him to be one of the best players to come out of there, I think that's a pretty good list.
Hey, we got to get them on the board. That's a great pick to round it out. And I have two Melos left. I'm gonna go with the meme though because it just feels right. But shout out to role player Melo, who I'm not picking. But role player Melo, he was on the Lakers, he was on the Blazers for a minute, redeeming his career again. He had a nice moment on the Thunder where they had a little bit of a big three with Westbrook and Paul George and him, and that was just a fun group to watch. So shout out role player Melo, who finally accepted that role. But that's not my pick. And neither is LaMelo Ball, who it would have been a fun throw in, but that's not my pick either. Carmelo did give his blessing for the nickname to LaMelo, so that whole one true Melo kind of debate isn't as big as it needs to be. But the Melo I'm going with the last pick, Mr. Irrelevant Melo, is the courtside pump fake Melo, where he's on the side of the court. He walks onto the court when the ball comes his way. He gives it a little pump fake, and then he's just joshing everybody. He's not gonna shoot that in the middle of a game. He wouldn't be that crazy. So, shout out to the courtside pump fake Melo. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad we drafted the Melos because they're endless. You can never have enough Melos. Each one is cooler than the last, and we can't really say enough about what Carmelo Anthony means to the basketball culture. He's your favorite hooper's favorite hooper, as we say before. Two of our favorite players. Obviously, the accolades are endless in every level that he played. And to me, I truly think of him as the most unstoppable individual scorer I've ever seen. And I think the toughest player to guard because point blank, like he's faster than your quicker wings and he's stronger than your strong bigs. And he can beat you with literally anything, whatever inch that you give him. If your foot is pointed the wrong way, he's going to attack that foot and get to the shot that he wants with as few dribbles as possible. Shout out 3 to the Dome. This is the Melo pod. I'm glad we did this. Congrats to Carmelo Anthony, first ballot Hall of Famer, well deserved. And I appreciate you hopping on, CT, in this tumultuous time for the Denver Nuggets. We'll see how they turn around. Who the heck's going to be coaching them come the playoffs? I mean, I don't even know if they announced it yet, but it's wild that all this is happening. So shout out Melo. Hopefully the Nuggets figure it out. And, thank you for taking the time today, CT. Been a lot of fun talking hoop.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ryan, for having me on. Like I said, big fan of the pod. You do great work as well. So always great talking basketball with you. And yeah, it's definitely a fitting day with the Nuggets news and talking Carmelo as well. And I'm hopeful just as a fan that the Nuggets retire his jersey. That's something that I, as a fan, the young kid in me would want him to get that jersey retired. But no, thanks for having me on. It was great great speaking with you about, whether it was the Nuggets, Carmelo, scouting, my coaching career. Was an awesome discussion. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. We'll do it again sometime. Always fun talking hoops, and just thanks for taking the time. It was a lot of fun. Super interesting hearing your perspective, your background, and your advice to coaches, and just your goals as a coach, and diving into all things Denver Nuggets. And one last shout out to Melo, my man, Carmelo Anthony, the one and only. Shout out Denver. That's a wrap. Appreciate you taking the time, man.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.